$1 million requirement, okay, which is the day I resigned. So you see it all, right? And this is this just as intense as any experience that you'll ever find. But all of my startups were software companies. All of them were enterprise software companies. It was a very broad horizon from electrical engineering CAD to mechanical engineering CAD to online backup and recovery long before Dropbox. We did this in 1996, 1997. It was one of the very first cloud companies in the world. One of them was an online security software company in 1995, just as the Mosaic browser or Netscape was being born. And the thing that made the market happen was Russian bankers hacked into Citibank and were able to embezzle $12 million, and that was the beginning of when customers said maybe there is something to this, right? A supply chain company. So a lot of different spaces. Yeah, please.
Do you mind if we ask questions along the way?
Please, go for it. Right.
No, I'm just curious. You mentioned that you developed something that is essentially a cloud system.
Yeah.
Why didn't it work back then?
It did work.
Why did it work?
We sold the company to Iron Out that worked brilliantly.
Okay.
The founder was an MIT PhD, serial entrepreneur, and I was his commercial guy.
Okay.
And we sold the company for a couple $100 million.
And your customer base for that?
Customer base, when he started the company, he was targeting consumers, which was absolutely the wrong market to target in 1996 with the client, because they couldn't spell it. So when I came in, it was a reset, which is who really would value it. It gets down to human-centered design, right? So at the time, I ran a lot of focus groups, and I had the board and the investors and the largely technical team sit around, and they all heard one by one, all of these customers saying, their prospective customers, that we would never buy this. So then, through hypothesis, it was, well, who would buy this? Well, at the time, Siebel was being done. Anybody doing a Siebel implementation, right? A Salesforce automation implementation. So if you are a large pharmaceutical sales force, a large technology sales force, you are using your laptop as your remote office. And the data that you back up on that thing is valuable to the company, well beyond the value of the laptop. And then telecommuting was a very important initiative back then. So you start to understand where there is a requirement and you adopt, right? And that's what human-centered design really is, right? So, but I will say this, it has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, right? And I say that with complete sincerity, right? Having been doing this for 30 years, for so many obvious reasons. And a lot of it comes down to the kind of mentorship you find in accelerator programs, the kind of access to capital that's never ever been available, certainly outside of Silicon Valley and Boston before, and the relatively small marginal cost to acquire the kind of computing and storage technology to get a company going, right? So every entrepreneur is on a journey, right? We all, regardless of what you guys are working on, right? You're all working on very different projects, right? And you're all under this clean tech umbrella, but clean tech is a very broad banner, right? And each of you, I'm sure, were inspired by something to take the path less traveled and to do, the startup route, right? And if you're doing this in a correct way, you are immersing yourself in the market. You're trying to understand what the dynamics of the market are and why there may be room for your new venture in the landscape, right? Because it's an irrational human act to buy from the startup unless that startup is doing something uniquely compelling. Otherwise, why not buy from the incumbent? Why risk my professional capital, my social capital, right? And then if you immerse yourself and you're convinced that you want to do it, you're going to go out and you're going to find a partner or two, right? Many startups fail here because of a lack of founder alignment, right? And all of you guys have what you would consider to be co-founders? Mather, kind of? Or are you sort of the head guy? Okay.
But yeah, I have a huge support group that I guess I consider my co-founders, but technically I started it alone.
Yeah, excellent. But I guess the question becomes, right? The word that is used up here often is owner. And nowhere else in the world have I heard startups and growth call themselves owners. And you understand why that's such a negative connotation to say that you're an owner as opposed to a founder or an executive, right? Because it says it's my company. investor doesn't look at it as your company. He looks at it as your collective company. And there is a tremendous lack of willingness to share equity up here. That is a death knell for startups. Because the single source of alignment that makes the venture capital and startup ecosystem work is alignment through upside. If we can create liquidity in our option pool, it's amazing what people will do, even for a small slice of stock options. What I see up here is there's normally one or two leaders and a whole bunch of employees. And there's a massive chasm between the mindset of a founder equity holder and an employee. And there's a much higher level of attrition than I see anywhere else. There's a lot more managerial friction because you don't get your employees to act like startup employees should, which is, we'll work until completion. If we have to come in 4 weekends in a row to get a product out the door to be a customer requirement, we will, right? As opposed to we're pulling a sled uphill. So how would you guys rate yourselves on that? I mean, have you shared equity somewhat generously with these key people?
Yeah.
Right? And you as well, Eric?
Yeah, I would say, I'm not afraid to admit that I've made mistakes. I think I've been too generous and maybe not having necessarily thought through, best candidates to align with. But at the end of the day, we're still working together.
Yeah.
But it's an evolving thing, I guess.
Okay. And the thing, and
of course, yeah, absolutely.
Say it.
Sharing the wealth is the most important trigger. People want to have dreams, right? They want to contribute to
Feel part of something.
And the reason why you have a better negotiation level is when we can make them believe that you are a key reason why this dream can work.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about something called the golden circle. The golden circle was popularized by a TED talk by the name of the guy who was Simon Sinek. And it's the why, the how, and the what. Most companies are very focused on the how and the what, not the why. And it's the why, as Mark Antoine says, that really creates the magnet that draws people to your vision, to your dream. And if they don't buy into your dream in a startup, the first sign of any challenge, which is going to happen not if but when, right? Every startup goes like this on this huge emotional roller coaster. If they don't buy into the why, they're gone. So that's very important, right? And then of course you incorporate, and then the big gap, of course, is between starting up and scaling up, right? And that's what we're going to spend most of our time on. And that could take on a million different permutations, right? So I won't even go through this piece, right? But as Mark, we're working on a dream, right? And that dream is on the Who They Entrepreneur, right? So one of the things that's such a paradox, right? This is very, very counterintuitive to most first-time entrepreneurs, is they believe they have to solve the whole problem at one time. So here's this market, right? So who's the algae guy? You're the algae guy?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I look at your one page, okay, you are, you're talking about every possible end-use market for algae, right? Now, so that's great, you're thinking big. But if you think that you have to address them all simultaneously, you've already failed. And so the question is, in the world that you operate in, right, as you start to go through your market discovery, where is either the pain most acute or the requirement the highest that will drive profitable adoption for you, allow you to create a commercial business foundation, give you the credibility that will allow you to then earn, to go out and raise capital, and then begin to expand, right? So if you look at Airbnb, has anybody used Airbnb? No? Right, yeah. So Airbnb, today, on Airbnb, you can rent a castle, you can rent a private island, you can rent a jet, you can rent a palace. But Airbnb didn't start by letting you rent all those things. Airbnb started by allowing very poor, starving artists, entrepreneurs, and creative types a very inexpensive temporary place to crash for a night or two at South by Southwest, right? And so what Airbnb was able to understand with the help of mentorship, right, they went through Y Combinator, is, yeah, at some point we're gonna become the temporary rental space for everybody. But the first thing you do is you validate your business model. Will strangers take personal risk on both sides of the transaction? Will I allow a stranger into my house, you know, just for $200? Or alternatively, I'm a single young woman and I can't find an affordable place to stay in New York City. Will I rent a place from a stranger overnight? Will I actually enter that person's apartment and put myself in the vulnerable position of locking the door behind me and laying my head down to sleep, right? Now, that may sound not so problematic today, but you can imagine the challenges that they faced early on to break through that trust threshold. And so there was a lot of early glitches. There were examples where people would go into someone's apartment, they would drill through a closet wall, they would break into a safe, they would pull a Joe Walsh, right? Joe Walsh, the famous guitarist of the Eagles that was notorious for trashing hotel rooms and created a song about it that was very famous, right? I destroy hotel rooms, my accountant pays for it all, it's all good, right? So a lot of people would pull a Joe Walsh in an Airbnb rental, right? And so Airbnb had to figure out how do we create a multi-site platform that will allow trust to flourish. On the other side, Uber started in San Francisco, not with UberX or Uber Pod or Uber Pool, but with Uber Black Car. So they started at the very top of the market, and they proved that there was an opportunity for time-starved, tech-savvy startup execs that didn't want to wait 25 minutes for a taxi in San Francisco. I mean, it's a real hassle in San Francisco. Now you have, you know, every version of Uber imaginable, and it's only going to get more mainstream, right? But they didn't start by saying we're going to be all things to all people. They started by saying we're going to focus on one city with one value prop for one persona. We're going to nail that business model. We're going to refine it until we get it. And then when we know it's working, now we will scale it. So whether you start top down or bottom up, you think big, but you start small. Okay? And so your challenge would be, you know, which, and it appears that you've got a hypothesis as to which one.
We've narrowed it down pretty.
Is it mostly aquaculture?
Yes, it's both, demand from their point of view and the ease of entry is there.
But even more specifically in agriculture, you know, they're refining their agriculture play to be able to work with how do we get cash quickly? How do we get a model of something you can sell for 4 years to revenue, but it's
right.
like, yes, we still have a 4 years to revenue plan, but there's a 2 years to revenue in a, you know, a subset of that plan.
That's right. And you want to just keep dialing down, right? Because there's a very big difference between generating cash flow in terms of the way investors will perceive your business, right? You go from being a science project to a business. Yeah. And it's a huge difference. Seriously. I mean, I'm not trying to be facetious. It's a huge difference, right? So this is one of the great photos of all time, and it's very symbolic to me because the guy laying on the mat was IBM. The guy laying on the mat was Uber. The guy laying on the mat was, Biogen. And so this is the famous photo of, he wasn't known as Muhammad Ali at the time, he was known as Cassius Clay. And he had just won the gold medal in the heavyweight 1960 Olympic boxing. And the guy on the mat is a guy named Sonny Liston, who was nicknamed the Bear. And Sonny Liston was, he was blockbuster, okay? Who's this loudmouth, brash guy, which is the same as, who's this little company called Netflix in Silicon Valley? They're not fucking gonna do anything to me, right? Well, it turns out that within the first round, Sonny Liston found out that Netflix actually had a game. And so to me, this is what it's all about, right? That, there are a lot of very big, very slow companies out there that just do not take competitive threats very seriously. Now, what's happening though is that there's more opportunity to partner with startups, for startups to partner with big companies than ever, right? But this is symbolic of sort of what we're trying to do, right? What all of us are trying to do in our startups is we're taking on the champion of the world, and we're going to go in and we're going to figure out a way to defeat that champion. And obviously, you look what Uber's done to the taxi industry. Taxi industry revenues are down 35% in San Francisco. The price of a taxi medallion in New York is down 50%. Okay, In just a couple of years, they are taking a 100-year-old industry and they're decimating it, right? But tech startups are hard, right? So this is some data from a former entrepreneur and now current HBS professor, Sahar Ghosh. He surveyed 2,000 companies that raised at least $1 million. Right? And by the way, it's only getting harder because the company formation has exploded since 2000. Okay? But only 1 out of every 1,000 companies gets institutional VC money. Okay? So that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of other money out there. There's equity crowdfunding. There's individual angels. There's organized angels. There's corporate.
I mean, it wasn't really a model at the time of the data, right? But
right.
Would you consider accelerators part of as institutional money, or?
No, I would not. No, not for this, not for these purposes. And remember, Techstars and Y Combinator were born in 2007, so they weren't really a force at that time. Okay, so it would really be the follow-on funding outside of the accelerator that would be institutional money. But the message, of course, is that this is a huge uphill battle, and I don't share this to dissuade you or to demoralize you, but to say you've got to go in with your eyes open, right? And that in order to be able to be one of those few companies that is able to raise institutional capital, you've got to do something extraordinary, right? Because 1 out of 1,000 are odds that are pretty tough. Okay? And that's what this is all about. So this is one of my favorite quotes. It's 500 years old, still applies. So there's this Italian dude named Machiavelli, okay? He lived in Florence, Italy, hung out with the Medicis. And what he said is very relevant to what we all do. There's nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, more uncertain in success, than to take the lead in introducing a new order of things. Because the innovator has for his or her enemies all of those who have done well under the old conditions, right? The incumbents. And lukewarm defenders and those who may do well under the new law. Okay, that's why it's so important. Because those who do well come out of the woodwork to ensure that you do not do well. Okay? Because their livelihood is at stake.
Particularly true for these guys?
Yeah.
Because most of their markets, it's basically an oligopoly.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not the new short-term revenue one, but certainly for Eric, his model is very much like you got 3 big dudes, and they've got lots of cousins.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they have a blood oath. That's right.
Yeah, maybe this business not should be to marry one of.
Yeah.
No.
Metaphorically, it kind of is.
Yeah, it's like.
Well, I say bring it on. I'm Sicilian, so.
See that?
Yeah.
We have shared cousins that were already there. All right. But I was in London on the 11th of June last year, and it was a very auspicious day in that it was a day that there were coordinated taxi strikes against Uber in every major city across Europe. And on that very day, there was chaos, and Uber generated 1 million new customers in a single day. Now, so you say to yourself, why doesn't the taxi industry understand that when they do this, they actually do themselves irreparable harm, right? Because the minute that now here I am complaining about my Uber guy not showing up today, but it's a rare occurrence.
Yeah.
But in general, and Montreal is an especially bad city for taxi service. I mean, it's just horrific. The minute that you try Uber, you're not going back to a taxi, right? One, because it's better service at half the price. So if the taxi industry was smart, they would shut up and they would figure out how to compete with Uber, and as opposed to create this ridiculous sense of entitlement and say it's not about us, it's about them, right? They will make all kinds of claims like they're much less safe. Well, if you look at the statistics, because of the way that old taxis are maintained, they're far less safe. Drivers are looking for people on the street, and so they're not paying attention, and there are a lot more accidents. So this is Machiavelli's law, right? These guys are clearly doing everything they can. Now, Uber's value prop is so compelling that it's not even a fair fight, right? So that's Cassius Clay versus Sonny Liston, right? So with all that being said, right, it doesn't matter how smart you are. I taught at MIT starting in 1996. I've met a lot of men that are scary smart. Very few of them have had successful startups, right? Because it's not just about IQ. Does IQ matter? But what matters more is hunger and discipline, and more than anything, I went to a Brad Feld book signing the other night. I use the word passion a lot, but I've got Sicilian blood in me, right? Brad Feld says it's not about passion. Passion is in bedrooms, it's about obsession. pick your word,
Yeah.
but it's about commitment and dedication. I'm gonna do this no matter what. And it's not I'm gonna do this because I'm gonna make a lot of money, right? If you go into this saying, the reason I'm doing this is to make a lot of money, you should go do something else right now. There are a lot of easier ways to make money. You do this because the problem that you are solving is so important to you that it is your life's work, at least for the time that you were running the startup, right? And the minute you lose that level of commitment or obsession or focus, you probably should turn the business over to someone else who has it. Because there's no other way to go and defeat these incumbents, especially in the oligopoly world that you're living in, right? You've got to be almost maniacal about it, right? And so I love this quote from Shaw, right? You've got to be unreasonable, right? The guy that is able to change the world, and Steve Jobs clearly was an unreasonable man. Anybody that worked for Steve Jobs would tell you he was an extremely unreasonable man, okay? When Steve Jobs was the CEO of Next, he would go crazy on the landscapers because they cut the grass outside a quarter of an inch too short. That's how unreasonable he was. Everything to him was about aesthetics, right? So, so let me say this, and I'm gonna move to another presentation, right? So whether we're sitting here in Quebec, or whether we're doing this in Boston, or whether I'm doing this, I've done a lot of this in Copenhagen, or I've done a lot of this in London, or Switzerland, or wherever I wind up doing these kinds of things, right? Yes, Silicon Valley does have a zip code or two, yeah, right? But it's more of a mindset. And really the intention is to talk about what the mindset is of Silicon Valley. How do you adopt that, regardless of where you are in the world, okay? So, Y Combinator, Paul Graham, right? The three things that create a successful startup: start with good people, make something customers actually want. That's where human-centered design comes in, and do it in the most cost-effective way possible. So let me kill this. So the golden circle. We're going to do this very quickly. And you should take 18 minutes and you should go watch this TED Talk by Simon Sinek. S-I-N-E-K, I think it is. What really matters is the why, right? And increasingly, as you start to hire millennials, right? And as you start to hire Gen Y and Gen Z, the why matters more to them than it's ever mattered to any generation. Sure, they really have to believe in what you're doing. They're not looking for a paycheck, right? They care deeply about the why. So do you guys feel like you have the kind of why that is compelling and captivating? So when you're interviewing your next candidate, it's almost as if you're on a quest, you're on a mission, right? And the people that you share that mission with, if they align with that mission, they're in, right? They're completely on board, right? But to me, so Hewlett-Packard was one of those companies. Hewlett-Packard had an incredible why. Hewlett-Packard kind of created a new operating system of Silicon Valley that's a meritocracy that now is standard operating procedure for startups all around the world and for creative organizations, right? Patagonia, do you guys know Patagonia? Mitchie? Yeah. I mean, Patagonia has a huge why, right? Way, way, way ahead of its time. Okay? And only after the why does the how and the what really matter. Okay? And I'm going to just skip through the rest of this, but when I think about a startup, and I know this is a very poor scam, but let me explain why these three circles are important, because it's kind of the organization of what I want to share, right? The yellow circle on the left is the solution that I am developing desirable to my persona, to my target customer? This is where the practice of human-centered design comes in. If I can create, and design thinking is another way of describing human-centered design. And these are two different ways of describing it, right? The blue circle is, can I create a viable business model? Can I create a sustainable business, right? This is where the business model generation, business model canvas comes in, right? Understanding, is this something, so you can create all kinds of things that are really very powerful. People love it, you can't make money, right? I can give away really cool stuff all day long forever. People love that, but I'm not going to build a business on that. And then because there is no business today that is not technology enabled, the red circle, or orange circle, is about, is this feasible, right? Is the platform I'm building on, or the science I'm using, scalable, reliable, right, over the long term. So I teach 3 different courses. My elective courses are human-centered design, disruptive business model innovation, which is the blue circle, and lean startup, which is the red circle, which is how do you get to a viable technology-enabled solution in the most cash-efficient way possible, right? So human-centered, so lean startup, right? These are, you know, the thing that's really interesting is lean startup was unfortunately made. Eric Ries has made a lot of money. There's a lean startup circle in Montreal. There are lean startup circles everywhere in the world. Eric runs an incredible lean startup conference every year. There's an entire series of books that are under the lean umbrella that, you know, Eric always writes an introduction, but it's anything from lean customer development to lean branding to lean UX UI to go on and on, right? But these are some scribblings from a very well-known woman named Beth Comstock. Beth Comstock is the extraordinary chief marketing officer of General Electric Corporation. Okay? More and more large organizations are adopting the lean methodology as an operating system. So GE has gone very, very deep on lean. The company Intuit, you guys know Intuit. Intuit created QuickBooks and TurboTax, right? 95% market share in the US market. Completely run the company on a lean methodology. And I can go on and on. It's not just a US phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon. So the message is entrepreneurs are everywhere, right? You understand, right? So if you ever run a YouTube search on the Intuit CEO, Scott Cook, the first guy that ever beat Bill Gates in a fair fight in a traditional, you know, head-to-head battle. He says that, you know, we are a 30,000 employee strong. And most people that say that are paying lip service to him. But Scott Cook views himself as the chief mentor. And he doesn't call his employees, they're entrepreneurs. And they form what they call 2 pizza teams. And the 2 pizza team means that the team is never bigger than it takes for 2 pizzas to feed them. So it's never more than 5 or 6 people, right? That's the biggest group you will find in Intuit is a 2 pizza team. And they all use lean startup, and they all go through the process of coming to the executive team, and the executive team view themselves as coaches and mentors and challengers, right? And all of the employees go into the market, they identify a need, they go through the lean startup process, and they continue to either get encouraged to go forward or, okay, this is not going to happen, go come back with another idea. GE does the same thing, okay? And to the point that Mark raised earlier, this minimum viable product, which you can see right here, right? Engineers want perfection, by definition. Teach them to get things out quickly, okay? Because you'll never get perfection, right? You'll never get perfection as an engineer. There's never been a perfect product that's ever been shipped. So the principles of lean startup are, 1, the first thing we need to do is we need to validate what we call problem-solution fit, okay? Problem-solution fit. And problem-solution fit is best analyzed on a lean value canvas, okay? Yeah, it's a very powerful tool, right? So a lean value canvas says what I really care about the most, right? And those numbers mean things, right? So the numbers are, which ones do I do first? So it turns out that the customer segment, the problem, and the solution are the 3 primary areas that you focus on, okay? Human-centered design helps you be very precise about the segment or segments, okay? So you would never do a lean value canvas for like 5 different segments. You would do a lean value canvas for every segment or every persona. So if I'm targeting this aquaculture segment, okay, or if I'm targeting people that are commuting long distances, you know, each day, and I want to have a very, very sort of systematic way of moving people from point A to point B, that's a segment. If now you're going to target a completely different segment, you're going to have a separate lean value canvas, right, to organize your thinking in a way that is coherent.
Would you design a separate, let's say you're in a productization debate, you're saying I enjoy license my tech? Do I sell a device or do I sell the output, right?
Yeah.
Not that this should resonate with anybody.
Yeah. Right.
But let's just say theoretically,
Yeah.
would you create, and you might have different customer segments in each one of those. Are you saying, I would create a customer segment for each one of those things and then lay them out and sort of play off the different lean items?
Absolutely. So what you're, a lot of the analysis you're referring to would go into the business model canvas, which is sort of the next version of this, right? So the business model canvas is where you get to, you have product market fit. Right now, we're trying to establish, is there really a problem that this persona has where they are so compelled, so motivated to solve the problem, that they're going to find something. It may be your stuff or may not be. But the very first step is there a real problem? Is there such acute pain that I cannot continue to manage my business without addressing this problem in some way, right? So that's the first step. And that's what the lean value canvas allows you to do. And then, of course, like anything else, right? So Peter Thiel will say that every good business is born out of having a monopoly, right? Now, what does that mean? It means you do something that no one else can do, right? So the key then is I have determined that there is a customer segment that I believe I understand what their challenge is. They have validated for me in their own language that they have a problem. Okay? They have described that problem in great detail. I have now hypothesized and proposed a solution to that problem. And that solution, by definition, has to have a unique value proposition for that solution to be compelling to that customer set. Yeah, please.
Just on that vein.
Yeah.
If you have a disruptive technology, that is truly disruptive.
Yes.
Let's say VHS to DVD, right?
Right.
People using VHS.
Sure.
Right? They were pretty happy with it. They didn't know that they were missing or that things could be better until the actual product came out.
Of course.
To that extent, this philosophy that you have to define what the problem is, the pain point, and then, okay, if that exists, then you can really, connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
To what extent does just pure, innovation and disruptive technology just kind of take that model to the side and say, build it and they will come?
Okay.
Once they see this, they're going to say, where have we been all my life?
Okay.
And what the heck are we doing here?
All right, so let me give you an example. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, in Boston, a Northeastern University undergraduate student by the name of Sean Fanning came up with this massively disruptive technology called Napster. You know Napster? Napster was the enablement. What's that?
I just think it was a great 2 years.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's
Right.
coming in its first.
So Napster helped people to basically steal IP. And at that time, a lot of traditional consumer electronics companies, Sony, and Panasonic, and Diamond Rio, came up with MP3 players. How many of those were successful? 0. Why was that? Because they took the approach of the technical problem, okay? You have an MP3 file, I have a device. You can play that song on my MP3 player. But the experience of playing those songs was horrific, right? Music is supposed to be a joyous thing. Consuming music is supposed to be fun and exhilarating. But with the Diamond Rio or with the Sony Walkman, it was anything but. Because you did not have the software or the user interface to organize all of these music files. You could not search. You could not create playlists. You could not organize by artist or genre or album or song. What Steve Jobs did when he came along, he said, okay, user experience, human-centric design. Let's look at the entire customer journey from the minute that you decide that you want to purchase a song. You want to organize those songs. You want to play and listen to those songs. And it goes way beyond the device. So there were two very important components there. There was Napster and there was the MP3 player. But what was missing was the ability to create an experience that made consuming and listening to music joyous. And it was the iTunes database and the business model of being able to go into the industry and say, we we will let you do one of two things. You can continue to let all your music get ripped off, or you can sell just a few songs at 99 cents a piece.
And I suspect Chief Steve that when he went to those big Sonys saying, you know what, you're being hit from the bottom.
Right.
Why don't you join me,
Right.
put all your catalog with me,
Yeah.
and eventually that would work. You could be able to flip it.
Right.
I suspect that lots of taxi companies would do exactly the same if some technical
Yeah.
other company or business model would come and say, you know what,
Yeah.
Uber's killing you, you have to react. So
Right.
nobody will rebuild something against it, but they will probably join someone that would come with a solution.
So your question, I understand where it comes from. You know, in everything I talk about in the bio, pharma, life science industry, of course, it's all about, you know, finding the next drug compound or the next biosimilar. It's a very different world. But when you are designing something to solve a problem, doesn't matter how disruptive the technology is, someone still has to adopt the technology and put it to use in their environment. And nobody buys technology for technology's sake. That story ended in March 10, 2001. Right? For a period of time, people would buy technology because it was cool. That's 15 years old. So no matter how disruptive the technology, sometimes the more disruptive, the more difficult it is for somebody to adopt. And you have to allow them to sort of adopt it in phases, or it will make their heads explode, right? You don't want to expose all of the disruption at once, because they can't handle it, right? It's that, you know, they can't handle the truth. Jack Nicholson did. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, you gave a great example, Blockbuster Netflix.
Yeah.
You know, Blockbuster Netflix, Blockbuster, you know, just this stalwart in the industry.
Yeah.
You know, we're nobody's gonna, we're too big. You know,
Right.
there's no little bit of sweet who's gonna change
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then, basically, he just took the model and flipped it upside down and changed it completely. You know, I like to think of what I'm trying to do as being the Netflix of hydrogen peroxide. You know?
Okay.
The big industries are the blockbusters, you know, you gotta go, have it delivered physically to
Right.
take you there, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Netflix, you just turn on your TV, it comes in through the pipes, so to speak, you know?
Yeah.
Wireless through your systems.
Right.
And you have access to all this stuff. You generate your own content, you know?
Right.
It's like a movie generator.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's the same thing with what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Um,
So what I was saying then, right? So remember, Netflix was very visionary. They called the company Netflix at a time when most of us accessed the internet on CompuServe and AOL with dial-up. So when I teach the Netflix case, it's a case that is incredibly exciting and fun. Remember
You're
when
talking
Netflix,
about the period where there was the shipping of the DVDs.
I mean, that was for years. For years,
Remind me when it was founded, that company?
oh, Netflix was founded around 1999.
Wow.
And the reason Netflix was founded was because Reed Hastings rented the movie Apollo 13. It sat like human nature. We all have done this before. You go back to Blockbuster a week late. Oh, that'll be $60, please, Mr. Hastings, right? Because the whole Blockbuster business model was predicated on late fees.
Exactly like Visa or MasterCard.
Yeah, 10%. Yeah, 10% of their revenue, which was all profit, was late fees. It was a punitive. It was a punitive business model.
Yeah.
So even though you and I are Sicilian, Reed Hastings wasn't Sicilian, but he had a Sicilian streak. He was so pissed off, he says, don't get mad, get even.
That's right.
So I'm gonna start Netflix. Now what Netflix was nothing more than a mailhouse. I'm gonna put a DVD in a red envelope. I'm gonna hire the former Postmaster General of the United States, who understands how the post office does and doesn't work. I'm gonna get the biggest volume discounts I can. But the thing that he did is the same thing that Uber's doing. And this is exactly to the point that you're raising, right? How do you defeat an oligopoly? How do you fuck up the taxi industry? You go to the user. You go to the people that are so dissatisfied with the status quo that you give them a better alternative and you let the user drive the change, okay? What happened with Blockbuster, Blockbuster had 5,000 retail stores. 97% of the US population was within a 7-minute drive of Blockbuster. They should have never given up their position. They owned the market. But what Hastings said is, okay, how do we make the user have a better experience of consuming movies? Like music, it's supposed to be a joyous thing, not a hassle, right? I don't want to wait in line 30 minutes on a Friday night to buy a movie.
Right.
So I'm not going to dictate to you, Eric, that you have to watch a movie in 2 days or you pay a late fee. If you want to keep a movie for 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years, go knock yourself out. You're an adult. You have the right to make that decision, okay? My business model is going to allow you to consume as many or as few movies a month as you want, right? And you're going to pay me for that privilege. But I'll never penalize you because it's not, I'm not here to judge how your new movie viewing habits should work. Then they did something that was brilliant. So to your point about content, they understood that when you went to a Blockbuster store, you only had about 15 titles that represented about 90% of the business, hence the name Blockbuster. What they did is they created a long tail. And they went out to the independent film industry, and they were really the reason that the independent film industry and the Sundance movement happened. And so as opposed to 15 films, there were now 15,000 films. But they took it one step further. They created a $1 million X Prize, and they created a competition to develop a recommendation engine that would say, if you like movie X, you're going to love movies Y, Z, and A and B. Now, what they didn't say is you're going to love movie C, because they knew they didn't have movie C in inventory, and they didn't want to recommend a movie that they couldn't rent you at that very moment. So they created a far better consumer experience. And very quickly, people said, why would I go to Blockbuster, wait in line 30 minutes, pay them a $40, $50, $60 late fee every week, when I can just put something in a return envelope without even going to the post office? I just put it in my mailbox and I put the flag on it, and the postman will bring it back. Okay? That's how you defeat an oligopoly, or in this case, a monopoly. What did Uber do? In Chicago, there's a guy named Rahm Emanuel. You know Rahm Emanuel?
Yeah, sure.
Rahm's a tough Israeli dude, okay?
Yeah, he was the Obama.
Well, he was his chief of staff, right? So he goes to Chicago to become mayor. Why anybody would want to be the mayor of Chicago, I have no idea. But someone has to do the job, so that's what he wanted to do. So Uber comes to Chicago, and Rahm, being a good politician, thinks, okay, I'm going to align with the taxi commission. No Uber. What Uber is so brilliant at is they understand social media and mass marketing. They create a Twitter account. 250,000 tweets later, Rahm Emanuel, one of the toughest guys you'll ever meet in government, says, you know what, I was just joking. We love Uber, and we welcome Uber to Chicago, and it's great to have them serving our voters. Okay? So to your point, how do you beat an oligopoly? You take advantage of the extraordinary lack of service that they provide, and you drive a grassroots revolution for what you do. Which requires a lot of social media marketing and community building, which this guy knows a lot about.
What is the equivalent of Twitter and this social media stuff, but for B2B?
Same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Find the big thing.
Yeah.
Just find it. Yeah.
I mean,
Now, listen, LinkedIn is important, but
You had an example, 2009, it's a class action suit against your oligopoly.
that's right.
Yeah, right.
Boom,
Yeah.
right? So there is pain.
There's
Yeah.
Maybe just 50 like senior decision makers in the world that are purchasing the stuff that they meet once a year in Congress and they say, oh my God, this is a pain in the ass. Who can solve it? You got to be in this meeting, right? You got to be there. This is exactly what, because they are going to talk about their pain. Can you solve it? Yeah. So the user experience is not just about the UX.
Right.
It's the way they purchase things, the way they look at solutions, the way it's everything that touches them.
yeah. So listen, I understand why you're skeptical about Twitter, but I guarantee you there's a lot more usage in your
No,
industry.
I'm not skeptical. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I see it as an extraordinarily effective tool.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just wondering if it works as effectively, not just in the Mr. Mrs. Everybody out there who's got a
Right.
cell phone and Twitter's day in, day
Yeah.
out, but is it as effective in me getting my message out to a specific group of people who are essentially, with my potential customers?
Oh yeah, no, so I mean, clearly marketing has to be integrated, right? So there are communities of practice. Right now, I've never searched LinkedIn for hydrogen peroxide communities of practice, but I bet they're there.
Probably there.
Okay, there are communities that hang around water coolers digitally, and you have to find where they hang out.
Yeah.
And you have to become a bona fide member of those communities, regardless of what that, it could be Quora, right, which is a Q&A site. It could be LinkedIn. It could be industry trade associations that have created, online communities of interest, for example. But that's how you go create communities, right? So the difference, let me just get through this pretty quickly. And this, it's very interesting to see how much things have changed, right? The traditional approach, the approach I grew up with, was we started with this high level of conviction that we had a great idea, and we were raising money to fulfill that idea by building the product, right? There was very little help. Because of my McKinsey background, I never subscribed to that model. I always was someone who said, how can we know until we ask? But the traditional approach was always, let's build something. Let's go out and raise a bunch of money and build something, okay? And the problem with that was you were speculating. And in the era that I started building companies, you could raise 50, 75, $100 million with this unproven belief in your idea. And then you would ship the product and nobody would adopt it. It was like, oh shit, what do we do now? Right? What VC is going to give us another $100 million, right? So the typical company was a product in search of a product. And there was a tremendous amount of money that was burned for no good, right? No productive use. So lean is what is called hypothesis-driven entrepreneurship, okay? And what that really means is, you know, you have the mind of a child. You have the humility to say to yourself, as long as I'm in this building, I do not know. And if I tell you that I know, I'm lying. Because the answer lies in the market. And if I do not immerse myself in the market, I simply don't know. Now, I have good business judgment based on my experience, and I can create a series of hypotheses that I will then go either prove or disprove in the marketplace, but I simply don't know. Okay?
They're usually informed intuition.
Yeah, right.
From Jeffrey Moore.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Right. So it changes everything, right? It changes everything because rather than you locking into a business model and then raising money to pursue exactly that business model, you are in search of a business model. You identify a persona, you validate that there is a problem that exists, you validate motivation to solve the problem, you validate that you have come up with an idea, you have hypothesized an idea for a solution that has a unique value proposition that the persona believes will solve their problem in a way that is compelling to them. You then do what is called the minimum viable product, right? You create this very low fidelity, just in time, just enough features to solve that problem, okay? And you obviously start to gather a lot of feedback, right? So it's also a very data-driven model. And it's a model that predicts failure. That failure is not something to be looked at negatively. That we use the phrase fail forward, okay? Fail fast and fail forward. I'd much rather get a minimum viable product prototype into the hands of the user in a week or 2 weeks or 5 weeks, let them lay hands on that, come back and tear it to shreds, and say, that's not what I was talking about at all. You completely misunderstood me. But you can't get that level of quality feedback until they can interact with some tangible prototype, okay? So this is what it's all about, right? And so let me go to this hypothesis-driven entrepreneurship slide.
And Mike, just to make a short point on this, the customers that kept for the longest period over time were the ones that actually gave feedback early on.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Recognized their input into the later versions. They stayed forever because no other incumbent was in a position to do this.
Yeah.
Do you get the preferential economic model? Like, do you have a lifetime discount or something?
But not necessarily over. If you solve a problem, it's you price based on this problem.
You know, just because of the flat paint and stuff, it's very hard to read this.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna back off on this. But you know, this is just another way of describing the mindset of lean starters: hypothesis-driven entrepreneurship, right? And it's as I described in the bulleted slide. I thought this would be an interesting way to look at it, but I just don't like how it's an eye chart for you guys right now. It doesn't really do it justice. So let me get out of that. I'll go back to where I was.
Can you flip us that slide out?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I will absolutely flip you that slide afterwards. Let's see. All right. So then the mantra here in Lean Startup, and I think this will be a lot easier to read. There we go. It's just rapid iteration. Okay. I have an idea or hypothesis. I validate that idea in the marketplace. Once I validate that idea, I build or I code, right? And now, is there a software element to what either of you guys are doing? No, it's all pure science, right? It's production.
I don't think it's the key element, but
Yeah.
there will be something.
Yeah. So, so that's why I want the word build and code. I mean, obviously for Mark Antoine, it's code, right? For you guys, it's a lot of science, a lot of production, okay? And obviously small batch stuff, right? Very, very small batch stuff, okay? But again, one of the really interesting case studies that I've taught is this case study about the French cement company Lafarge. You guys know Lafarge? And I can't say that I'm an expert, but I do know that a part of that case study was how do you take a commodity business and create high margins? And they essentially used the lean startup methodology to target, and the human-centered design methodology, to target personas that would value services wrapped around cement, right? I mean, it's hard to imagine that you could use cement as something other than a commodity, but Lafarge went into this exercise saying, how do we turn cement into a solution? Who are the personas? What do they value? How do we wrap a whole range of services, whether they are architects or civil engineers or whatever persona we're talking about? How do we start to create very premium priced solutions where cement, of course, is an enabler, but only an enabler, right? So even in a market like that, right, where hydrogen peroxide is not necessarily something you're going to view as typically strategic. But if you take the human-centered design approach the way that they did with the iPod, you create an experience for somebody who you targeted, and it's a totally different discussion. So they're not just buying through a purchasing process and counting you over price and availability, right? You're in a collaborative discussion with them about how do I help you solve this problem, right? I am invested in helping you solve this problem. Jeff Moore calls that the whole problem, right? So you're trying to get these small batch prototypes into the hands of your customers. Let them use the product, let them use it in a production or a pilot environment, let them experience it, let them come back and give you feedback. And you don't want to be patronized. You want to be given really tough feedback. You want to be told this sucks, right? Don't patronize me, right? That doesn't do me any good. Beat the living hell out of me. Tell me why this won't work. Tell me why you're not going to buy this, okay? Let me continue to work hard. And give me that level of respect, okay? Ask the hard questions. Live in the awkward moment, okay? Obviously, the metrics around this are important. How do I measure progress, right? And so here, this is a really great case. IBM was on the verge of bankruptcy. And when Lou Gerstner came in from this little consultancy, little boutique, and everybody said, how can a guy that ran a biscuit company, turn around IBM? He's not an engineer, right? Thank God he wasn't an engineer, okay? Because he would have just doubled that on mainframes and all kinds of stuff. But what Gerstner was able to understand is that, the way that large corporations manage their businesses, right, what they call Horizon 3 businesses, is it's all around financial ratios, right? It's very precise, right? It's about return on assets, return on capital, return on investment, right? It's about really hard facts, but startups are about getting more strategic clarity and reducing ambiguity. So there is traditional GAAP accounting, right? Generally accepted accounting principles that the chartered Canadian accounting group would do, or American FASB would do. But Lean Startup introduces the notion of innovation accounting, right? Because what IBM found is it wasn't that it didn't see the World Wide Web. It wasn't that it didn't see routing the way Cisco invented routing. It wasn't that it didn't see all these technologies. What happened was they created unfair measurements to grade the business. How do you compare the same measurements in a nascent product line like web or e-commerce against a mainframe business that's been around for 60 years? So the metrics had to become more innovation accounting. So Lou Gerstner, the guy that ran the biscuit company, understood innovation accounting a long, long time ago. And the way that he mandated his senior executives in what they call the Emerging Business Opportunities Group was, here are metrics that are going to show that you're getting increasing strategic clarity around what it's going to take to scale this business. So I'm not going to hold you accountable for profit because you don't have any profit. I'm not going to hold you accountable for your revenue growth because you got no revenue. I'm not going to measure return on X because you don't have it. But let me tell you how I will measure you, okay? So the metrics that you will use to gauge your success will be around customer engagement. Are my customers engaging with me, okay? Even if they've not adopted the product, are they in a genuinely collaborative discussion with me about solving their problems, right? So for both of you guys, right, the ability to just bring customers to the table to have these strategic discussions is a powerful indicator that you are on the right track, okay? And there are ways to measure that are not traditional, but really important. Because the question is, how do you measure progress if it's not through revenue, right? How do you sit through a board meeting with a group of investors and advisors and talk about this is the progress we made last week or last month or last quarter, right? And so those metrics are very important, right? And every quarter, whatever the cadence is, you've got to be able to say, well, we actually made progress on 3 or 4 metrics, but we actually lost some on this, right? And so those, yeah, please, Eric.
Who would that matter to? That the answer to that question, how do you measure progress if not through revenue? Who would be satisfied with, that, we're engaging with customers and all the rest?
An enlightened board of directors. Okay. So let me share with you one of my biggest frustrations about the venture capital industry outside of a few clusters. In Quebec, the vast majority of VCs started in their careers as pension fund managers. Now, do you see how fucking crazy that is? So here you have, on the one end of the scale, a guy who gets up every morning to preserve capital. And the word risk is the last word he wants to think of, right? I am here to preserve capital. Now, we have an early stage, either a seed stage VC or a Series A VC, right? Obviously, they should be thinking different. But in Quebec, there's this belief that venture capital is a financial role. And anybody that was in finance can be a VC. So if you're a pension fund manager, come on down. Now, my friend Mark Antoine and I could, over like 8 years, we could tell you some stories, okay? Right, bud? We could tell you some stories about how broken it is. Okay? So the problem is, if you're sitting with a more traditional, non-entrepreneurial venture capitalist who doesn't understand ambiguity, he's going to tell you to do things that are not just okay, but they're going to be detrimental, if not downright damaging to your business, because they don't get it. Okay? So like anything else, alignment is important, and you have to align with the right investors, because aligning with the wrong investors is a kamikaze mission. Okay?
AKA the right person.
The right person within the firm.
Although, to be fair, not all board members are investors necessarily. You've got independents who
Of course.
a bunch of other people
Right.
may not have exactly that mindset.
Well, right, of course. And your job is to make sure you have the right people at the table, because here I've seen startup executives sue or be sued by their board members, which is almost unheard of in the United States. Because the board members are insanely conservative. And Mark Antoine knows this story very well, and they don't let you execute your business plan.
Or take risks.
Yeah, because
they're the exact same thing. Yeah,
we
we can't
orient you in a way because their mindset is to be able to preserve. So they forget only the growth in sales or in profit will drive. So you can't focus on new products, there's some new marketing and everything.
Exactly.
Even the landscape is changing, your business doesn't. So you become a conservative company in a startup suit.
It reminds me of the trip from LRM, the trust, risk, innovation, and profit.
So to answer your question very simply is, first of all, a very important part of your role as CEO founder is to put the right people on your board, to only allow investment from those people that understand the unique challenges of the startup. They don't impose, a mature company, accounting and measurement system, right? And they have a track record of taking risks with their startups, right? And this is all critical. So there's nothing worse than being in a board meeting when there's no alignment. So you all, this is a very important part of it, right? Not only are you buying them yourself at the same time, right? And ideally, so there's a young woman that I have incredible respect for. She's a Korean American woman. She started a company that was driven by the fact that her grandfather died of diabetes in his sleep when she was 9. And she's created a company that has designed a personal robot that is in the form of a cuddly teddy bear that is given to children with type 1 diabetes when they leave the hospital. And she created 30 prototypes, okay? Not because she's stupid. She's a remarkably bright woman. She gave a pitch in a competition. Warren Buffett was the lead judge. She won. Forbes magazine has named her one of the up-and-coming women in tech. She's 24 years old. She's remarkable. But when you see Hannah Chung, who has a mechanical engineering and industrial design background from Northwestern University, she is humble enough to go visit young children either in the hospital or at their family home, dressed in the costume of a bear, so that she can sit across from a child and see how they respond to this teddy bear robot. And the teddy bear robot is designed to help them have an understanding companion when a lot of kids get ostracized because they can't have ice cream, they can't have cake, they can't have sweets, they can't drink soda, and so they're outside. Okay? So she wanted this product to work for these kids. It's amazing how honest kids can be. 30 prototypes before she was ready to ship this product. She's now in 5% of all U.S. homes where there are children with type 1 diabetes, and they've got enough traction now that they're creating a second one around food allergies. Okay. I'm running a session at MakerBot on Thursday night, which is a big 3D printing shop, and I have her head of product with 3 or 4 other entrepreneurs coming in, talking about rapid prototyping, which is
Bree still the head of the company there? Or?
Oh, yeah, he's still the head of the company. He's a MakerBot. Yeah, he's heart and soul of that company. Yeah, I'm doing this in Boston. They have an outfit in Boston or whatever. But it's all about rapid prototyping using 3D printing to get things in the hands of users, right? So the fact that you have to go through multiple iterations should not be viewed as failure. It's the Thomas Edison version of, 29 ways not to build a personal robotic teddy bear for kids, right? And you want to do that with the least amount of financial investment possible. So the mindset is, and again, these are photos you can grab directly from a book called The Lean Entrepreneur, right? You're constantly throwing out formulations that don't work. You are willing to completely throw out your product or your code, right? There's no sense of attachment. This is the Zen principle of non-attachment, okay? That everybody has this misconception that Steve Jobs never got feedback from his customers, okay? It's completely nonsensical. Johnny Ive was named the greatest industrial designer of the last 10 years. Johnny Ive was knighted by Queen Elizabeth. Johnny Ive was always at Steve Jobs' right hand. He was the guy that managed the user experience. So even though the mythology was Steve Jobs didn't give a damn about his customers, Steve Jobs knew better. Johnny Ive and a company called IDEO were responsible for the user experience. Johnny Ive could be like a lot of very arrogant, very competent men and say, the user doesn't get it, therefore they must be stupid, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, it's their fault. Johnny Ive said, the user doesn't get it, I must have screwed up somehow. Just because I was named the greatest industrial designer of my generation, just because I was knighted by Queen Elizabeth, doesn't mean I have a monopoly on the way customers want to use my products. So Johnny Ive is the guy on the right. Okay, they don't like this piece, so I'm going to tear it out.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
Let's keep looking.
Right, and that's exactly it, right? So there's a lot of humility, right? When you hang around MIT, as I have for a long time, you meet a lot of MIT PhDs that have a sense of entitlement. I'm very bright, therefore I'm entitled to be wealthy. It doesn't work that way. The less humility you have, the more likely you are to fail, okay? So the mindset is you're running a lot of small pilots, a lot of small experiments, right? You're not investing everything. in one approach, okay? Because when you invest everything in one approach, you don't get to go back to the drawing board and go do it a second time or a third time. So this is all about experimentation, right? We're all scientists, basically, right?
Just a quick question.
Yeah, please.
In that previous slide where you showed that, basically planting seeds everywhere.
Yes.
Do you think there's a risk that, investors may see that as a lack of focus? Like, here's so many possibilities, but you really haven't kind of, nailed it down. Which one is your lowest hanging fruit? Which one is your first
So we'll go back to the phrase informed intuition. And I'm not suggesting that you run 400 experiments, right? But you said, okay, here are 3 personas, any one of which could be my holy grail persona, the one that's going to get me scammed. Okay? Right now, I can't tell you which one. I have an informed intuition that it could be one of these 3. Let me create a low-def, minimum viable product for these 3 personas. Let me put it into their hands. Let me see what kind of feedback I get. And let me see if one of these horses starts to pull away. So that now I can start to invest behind one of these 3 horses. So again, if you have the right mindset of your board members, the right mindset of your investors, and you all know that this is a best practices approach, and you're not doing it in an incredibly unfocused way, then the answer is no. But if you bring in your traditional Quebec VC, who doesn't understand what I will call innovation accounting, then you will have a challenge with that.
Well, imagining the 30 teddy bears.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, we had 29 failures.
Yes.
This is what we learned from this failure. This is what we learned from that failure. It's codified. It's an evolving
Is it an
conversation.
iteration? Is
Yeah.
it an iteration?
Of course, absolutely.
Iterating until it responds to the needs of the
Yes, until you finally put your hands on that child and say, you know what, there's nothing, and nothing's perfect, but there's no significant complaint that will prevent that child from making it a part of their lives.
Part of development investment.
Yeah.
And I love to think about the market as a lab.
Yeah, right, that's exactly right.
So we are okay to drive a lot of experiments in the lab.
Yeah.
We are, in a closed vacuum. And then we suppose that we open the doors and say, ta-da, here's the final product, so everybody's going to buy it.
Yeah.
But I prefer to see the market as a lab, where we keep pushing things to the customer, and from time to time we just close ourselves to do a quick fix, and then we retest it. Customers are, super interesting because they will forgive.
And it's
Most
most relevant.
if you generally go to them and say, I'm not trying to sell you something. I need you to tell me if what I'm suggesting to you fits your needs. And can I solve anything about it? The answer is yes. I'm going to buy something. If it's no, good. I'm going to keep looking.
Right.
Either I don't have a business, then we're going to go out and do something else.
Yeah. So the thing that I find most scientists don't have a full appreciation for is the importance of so precisely profiling your target customer, right? And the operative word that I've always used is a persona, right? And a persona is nothing more than a way that you can define through a series of characteristics, sort of a name and a face and an image, where you define the dead center perfect customer of that target market, right? You know them. You know what their habits are. You know what they love. You know what they hate. You know what drives them crazy, right? And it's very empowering because everyone on the team now, if this is marketing Mary or this is, whoever the customer is, right? We know where they went to school. We know what their education looks like. We know what they do for hobbies. We know what they hate to do at work, right? We know them that intimately. And only when you know them that intimately can you design something that effective for them, right? So when you go, I'm not a fisherman, okay? I don't know if anybody goes fishing or not. It's probably, you're from Halifax, you must go fishing, right? Okay. So you know better than I do, right? The way that you find fish is you have to know a lot about their habits, right? You have to know, are they bottom feeders? Do they hang around a coral reef? Do they hang around the rocks? Do they hang around, are they really deep? What kind of bait? And so the bait needs to be predicated on so many different factors. So you're going to go fishing for a persona. How do you reach that persona, right? And the problem I see, especially with scientifically oriented founders, is you look at all customers as kind of the same. And I would say you almost need to be in the opposite. It's almost like markets of one. Now, at some point, you will aggregate those markets of one into a target segment. But I want to know so much about what industry, what sub-industry, what title do they have, right? What is their legacy or their history of being an early adopter? Are these customers that are speaking on podiums at industry events, exhorting the industry to improve the way it does business, right? So one of the companies I consult with up here, I was with all day yesterday, they're in the business of providing surgical sterilization solutions to hospitals. And, now we have this new superbug, right? This superbug, I don't think I saw UCLA Medical Center, 7 people died about a month ago because they used endoscopes and they weren't able to clean them effectively. And you put an endoscope that's infected in someone's body and next thing you know, they're dead, right? And so one of their customers is sort of the head of the Toronto, Ontario surgical sterilization marketplace, right? That is a classic early adopter, okay? You want to find those people. They are in a class of themselves. They are, like Mark said, the kind that will forgive you for pretty much anything if you are willing to listen and try hard to meet their needs, right? And you guys are clearly in the business of looking for people other than mainstream customers, right? You're trying to change behavior. I'm going to show you guys a video. Let me show you a video. This is there's so much behind this, and it's actually a video of a company from Denmark that I went consulting to. I teach at the Technical University of Denmark. And this is poetry. It's not Neruda, it's better than that, okay? It's not Longfellow, it's better than that, okay? Way better than that. I gotta get on the internet, don't I?
Yeah, I don't think we can show it.
All right, thank you. Forgot about that. Yeah, I'm just gonna go on YouTube for, it's a short 3-minute, 4-minute video.
Good?
Cool.
Sure, pop it in a sec.
Yeah.
Take it.
So,
You want to leave on your side.
yeah, I'll probably eat a taxi. I think I'll probably just eat a taxi on the way there. All right, so, hello?
These guys ripped it up.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they went next door and they tested the whole menu.
You did?
We actually split it.
Oh, wow, okay.
Now, the volume may not, I don't have, do you have any external speakers in there?
I didn't bring mine, it's at home.
Okay, all right, well, you guys may want to come up here and listen to this, okay? So let me just give you the backstory and stuff, right? And this is actually very relevant to you guys. And that is that there was some technology that was developed at the Technical University of Denmark. And Technical University of Denmark is a place where I've been teaching a corporate ventures class for about 10 years. And all of our students are executives. And it's all about growth platforms. And this was developed at a large Danish manufacturing company called Danfoss. I don't know if you guys know Danfoss or not. You've come across Danfoss in your travel. And they had come up with a product called tantalum, which is an element which is tantalum. And tantalum was used to coat process equipment to prevent corrosion. And they were having a hell of a time finding early adopter customers because most people in the process industries are the most stodgy, conservative, risk-averse people on the planet, right? So part of the mission was how do we find customers that would adopt this new technology? Where is the problem and the pain so acute? So identify for them a customer in Southern California. And I'll let this video now speak for itself. Why? I need to talk. I'm
Might be trying to put it out through.
Oh, you think so?
No.
All right.
Just against.
All right.
You can can choose, oh, hang on, we can choose you can choose a different speaker.
Okay.
Hang on a second. So that.
Well, you know,
Allows you to go back
you can just watch it on my laptop. Let me see if it changes.
All right.
No, I got full volume. Full volume here. Yeah, it's very strange. You want to try yours? Just
Yeah, sure.
go to tantaline.com.
Yeah.
Or just go to YouTube. I don't get it. I listen to this all the time.
Because you really want it to work right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's clearly why.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange that I can get here. So just go to YouTube. Just go look up the word tantaline, T-A-N-T-A-L-I-N-E. I'm going to hit the head, is it out here?
Left, on your left.
Your left hand.
I think Mike, no, you said you deal with us, that's it. Yeah, that was her in the video I saw on the screen. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.